Welcome to the deep dive. Today we're taking a bit of a detour into some early H.G. Wells, specifically Select Conversations with an Uncle.
That's right, and it's maybe not the Wells you're expecting. Forget time machines for a second. This isn't really a story in the usual sense.
No, it's presented as these chats, right, between the narrator and this uncle character.
Exactly, an uncle who's uh, pretty eccentric, very opinionated. Imagine eavesdropping on these conversations about, well, all sorts of things in the turn of the century. Some trivial, some surprisingly deep.
And all filtered through his very particular viewpoint.
Yeah. So our mission here, our deep dive, is really to unpack these conversations, pull out the interesting bits, the funny bits, the surprising insights.
And see what this character, this uncle, can maybe tell us about people and society, even looking back from today.
It's like getting a shortcut into this quirky little corner of Wells's early writing.
So this uncle character, tell us a bit more about him.
Okay, so the narrator describes him as active, very talkative, garrulous, I think is the word used.
Likes the sound of his own voice, maybe.
A little bit, perhaps.
Yeah.
He's definitely judgmental, likes to hold court. Apparently, he even prepared witty remarks beforehand for social events.
Oh, really?
Yeah, and kept a notebook. For his future reminiscences, he'd had some success, made a bit of money out in South Africa, then came back to London.
And London didn't quite meet his expectations.
Not at first, no. He was hoping for these, amazing intellectual salons, especially with the literary people, sparkling conversation.
But he found them a bit dull.
She found them jaded, yeah. Like they'd used up all their energy writing, just wanted to rest afterwards.
Uh-huh. Okay, so where did he turn next?
He tried the smart set, the fashionable crowd, the Fitzbrilliants they're called.
Which naturally leads him straight into talking about fashion itself.
It does, and he comes out with this cracker of a line. Fashion is just brand new vulgarity.
Wow. Okay, unpack that.
But for him, there's hardly any difference between the super fashionable and the, what he calls the absolutely vulgar.
Just two sides of the same coin.
Pretty much, in his view. It's all part of the same human tendency.
And he sees it in language too, doesn't he? The way slang travels.
Yeah, exactly. He talks about phrases like fin de siècle, that end of the century vibe, or even cliché. They start off trendy, maybe a bit exclusive.
And then they trickle down.
Right down into what he rather dramatically calls the unspeakable depths below. He imagines people using this once chic slang for, well, very ordinary things.
So what drives this, according to him?
He puts it down to the gregarious instinct, that kind of basic human tension.
Meaning?
Meaning you desperately don't want to be seen as commonplace, just like everyone else. But you also really dread being seen as too eccentric, too weird.
So you're always trying to copy others just enough to fit in, but not so much that you become boring.
Exactly. It's this constant balancing act, trying to be distinct, but not too distinct.
Which leads to this funny idea he has.
Oh, the fashion and originality.
Yeah.
Where everyone's trying so hard to be unique in the same way.
That someone who's just genuinely themselves, not following any trend of being different, actually becomes rare.
It's a neat little paradox.
And for him, the real test of whether something's just fashion is how popular it is.
Yeah. If it's everywhere, if it's a thing of the pavement, as he calls it, that's almost enough for him to dismiss it.
A bit snobbish, maybe?
Oh, definitely a whiff of that. But his core point is about this endless chase. He uses this great image.
Go on.
The leopard cannot change his spots. The fashionable will ever pursue this chimera of distinguished correctness, this sort of illusion of perfect style, and trail the inseparable howling vulgar in its wake.
Like a dog chasing its tail, but the tail is vulgarity.
Kind of, chased by the horror of its own tail, he says. They can't escape it because they're defined by what they're running from. It's really about status anxiety, isn't it?
Absolutely. Okay, so how does this apply to other things? Like decorating your house, the mural decoration section.
Right, he goes to visit his friend, Bagshot, sees his new place, and immediately starts critiquing the pictures on the wall.
Not just any pictures, though.
No, the really popular reproductions of the time. He mentions things like G.F. Watts's Love and Life or Love and Death, very famous sort of sentimental Victorian paintings, or a Rembrandt portrait that everyone had a copy of.
So it's not the original art he dislikes, it's the fact that the copies are
Everywhere.
Yeah.
Ubiquitous. He compares them to popular songs or popular quotes. They're so overused, they just kill off any appreciation for anything else.
He jokes there are only, 50 correct pictures the British public approves of?
Something like that. Because they're so familiar, he says they become awfully dry and dusty. Your eyes just slide right off them.
You stop seeing them.
Exactly. He thinks a picture needs to be a little fresh to please.
So his advice is,
Forget the correct stuff. Go find struggling artists, men pining in garrets. Buy something unfamiliar, something that makes visitors stop and look. Maybe even puzzles them a bit.
there's artistic virtue in that, he reckons, and maybe a good investment.
Possibly. Spotting talent early. But it feeds into his bigger idea about art, that just following trends in decoration isn't art, it's just fashion again. Real appreciation has to be individual.
There is no such thing as absolute beauty. That's his line, isn't it?
Yes, that is the Magna Charta of the world of art. Art should fit you personally. It's not about buying the right brand.
He makes that contrast, doesn't he, between the person buying the mass-produced print and...
And the greengrocer who buys some cheap, maybe technically imperfect original painting just because they like it. He says the greengrocer is far nearer artistic salvation.
It's about genuine connection versus just following the herd. Still relevant today, I suppose.
Very much so. Think about music playlists versus digging for unknown bands.
Good point. And speaking of music, he has strong feelings about social music, too.
Oh, yes. He recounts this awful experience at a party where he was forced to listen to music.
Of course.
Well, that's how he saw it. His view is that music at a social gathering should just be background, pleasant like the decor or nice air. Shouldn't stop people talking.
But he found it did.
Absolutely. He complains about being shushed when he was trying to have a conversation. He calls it the very Hades of hospitality.
Strong words.
He thinks hostesses sometimes use it a clamorous woman and a painful piano, basically to shut guests up when they don't know what else to do with them.
And he sees musical types as almost religious about it.
Yeah, like the piano is an idol, and you have this priestcraft of pianists and an inquisition of fiddlers demanding silence and reverence.
It sounds like a social critique, but you mentioned there might be a personal edge to it, too.
There's a hint, yeah. He mentions being annoyed because some young woman he wanted to talk to was just staring dreamily at the piano player, completely ignoring him.
So maybe a touch of sour grapes fueling the social commentary.
Could be. It makes it more human, doesn't it?
Yeah.
The insight being sometimes forced entertainment gets in the way of actual connection.
Okay, let's move to something seemingly quite different. The art of being photographed. He really dissects this, doesn't he? Looking through an album.
He does, in minute detail. He hates the awkward poses, the way people brush their hair so unnaturally it loses all character.
The clothes looking too perfect, like fashion plates.
Exactly. Stiff and unnatural. He tells a story about some important person looking ridiculous, snapped with a hat and cigar.
And he thinks photographs are serious business, like getting married.
Yes. He says issuing a photo is something you can only undo with infinite woe. A bit dramatic, but you see his point about permanence.
The camera having mordant moods. What does that mean?
Like it has a biting sense of humor or irony. Can capture the foolishness behind the pose. He gives an example of someone dressed as a crusader, but the photo just shows how silly they look.
And his view on retouching is interesting. Starts off quite positive.
It's amazing. He first describes the retouchers as fairies, almost magical beings who make plain women beautiful and common men heroic. Like they have a Midas touch or they're angels.
But then he pulls back.
Then he brings it back to reality, saying they're really just editing with an eye to the market. Making things look good to sell, basically, which is, probably closer to the truth.
He doesn't like the props in studios either, or the old poses.
No, standard furniture, the sofa droop pose. He prefers just simple, modern headshots.
And he has a particular issue with hands.
Oh, yes, especially in evening wear photos. He claims they always look 4 shades darker than the face, making people look grubby or awkward.
So what's his conclusion?
That people need education in how to be photographed. He calls it a neglected field, part of deportment, how you carry yourself.
He thinks people are too passive, like dumb-driven cattle.
Yeah, just doing what the photographer says instead of asserting their own personality in the picture. It's fascinating thinking about that now in the age of selfies where everyone is their own photographer and retoucher.
Very true. The performance of self. Okay, let's zoom out a bit. He had bigger philosophical ideas too, right? Like this theory of the perpetual discomfort of humanity.
Yes, his great discovery, he calls it. It's a bit bleak, actually.
How so?
His idea is that every era has its ideals, its picture of happiness. But reforms, social changes, happen so slowly.
That by the time they actually arrive, our needs have already changed.
Exactly. So humanity is always sort of uncomfortable, continually troubled, because the solutions we fought for are now solving yesterday's problems, not today's.
And who does he blame for this constant disruption?
The reformers,
Mm.
the pioneer people, he calls them confounded, glaring, and unshorn anachronisms.
Because they keep shaking things up, stopping people from just settling down.
Precisely. Stopping comfortable people, like himself perhaps, from just getting comfy.
You can really hear his conservative side there.
Oh yeah, he says flat out, it seems to me so much easier to fit the man to the age than to fit the age to the man. Just adapt. Don't try to change the world.
And he sees a personal cost in this too, like outliving your time.
Yes. That feeling when a reform you once championed finally happens, but you've already adapted to the old way, and now this new reality feels wrong.
Alien. So progress isn't smooth, it's jerky and uncomfortable.
For him, yeah. Always at a sink.
Related to this, he talks about the use of ideals. What's his take there? Are they good, bad?
Necessary, he thinks. He calls them draperies of the mind.
Draperies. Like curtains.
Yeah, to cover the nakedness of truth. Like furniture making a bare room livable. Ideals make harsh reality more comfortable.
But there's a catch.
A big one. Don't be a slave to your ideals. They get old, dusty, moth-eaten even. You need to be willing to change them.
Where do you get new ones?
Literature. He sees books as warehouses of ideals. You can browse for ones that suit you better.
Okay, but his main advice is don't take them too seriously in everyday life.
Exactly. Don't bring them down into the muck too much. That's childish. And crucially, never judge other people by your ideals. And definitely don't pick ideals that make you feel bad about yourself.
Don't turn them into idols. He uses some strong analogies there.
Procrustes. Stretching or cutting people to fit the bed. Nebuchadnezzar and the golden statue. Yeah, don't let ideals become tyrannical.
So what are they for then?
For him, the ideal world should be kept far away from reality. A place for a mental holiday, basically.
You visit, get refreshed.
And then come back, without illusions, without encumbrance, but with renewed zest, to the sordid world of the actual. That's the proper use, he insists. Anything else is fanaticism and folly.
And he warns they can trip you up if you misuse them. The Javers story.
Right. Poor Javers. His wife builds up this ideal husband in her head and compares the real Javers to it constantly, and it ruins everything. A cautionary tale about expectations.
Okay, let's get personal again. His views on love, engagement, marriage. Starting with him buying engagement rings. That sounds surprising.
It is. The narrator finds him doing it, and the uncle just gushes. Being engaged, he declares, is the ideal state of man. Something he's longed for all his life.
Ideal, more than marriage.
Oh, much more, for him. He draws this huge contrast. Engagement is all reverence, mystery, distance. The fiancé is like a Madonna, a holy grail.
Right.
Decorative.
And marriage?
Marriage is familiarity. Your wife becomes a confidential companion, sure, but you also become property, a mere draft camel, all burden sharing and practicality.
He thinks different women suit each state.
Yes. An innocent type for engagement, someone to worship, but for marriage, you need someone practical who can, climb fences and put up with your smoking.
And he thinks the familiarity of marriage leads to problems.
A considerable craving for change, he calls it. Interest wanders. Jealousy starts. He even blames Adam and Eve's troubles on them being married. If they'd stayed engaged, Eve wouldn't have chatted with the serpent.
That's quite a take. So his own engagement, he hopes it lasts forever.
I hope for all the rest of my life, he says. And then the twist, the woman apparently didn't want to marry again anyway, which encouraged him to propose just being engaged. It's very him.
So despite loving engagement, he does seem to face actual marriage later with dread.
Oh, total dread. He calls it the looming great change. And he uses these really vivid, quite negative analogies.
The sea creature, the Ascidian.
Yeah. Yes. Starts as a free-swimming little tadpole thing, then sticks itself to a rock and becomes this vegetative excrescence, losing his brain and eye. Cheerful.
And the Ovid comparison.
Like those myths where someone gets turned into a tree or a rock after some emotional moment, suddenly fixed, rooted, domesticated.
His fear is becoming just a provider, a mercenary.
Like the male ants who shed their wings after mating. Their brief flight of freedom is over. Now they just work. While the wife manages him, the child man.
And then he talks about the pains of marriage, not the state itself, but the process, the wedding.
Yeah, he starts noticing wedding stuff everywhere. Shops, invitations, and the horror of the operation, the wedding ceremony, starts to outweigh the fear of married life itself.
He's really down on wedding customs.
Absolutely scathing. Calls the whole thing almost the most asinine position adults can put themselves in, especially the cake, concentrated biliousness.
And he has that conspiracy theory about tradesmen keeping it all going.
Fantastic, isn't it? This secret society of tradesmen using white magic in shops to hypnotize women into thinking all these expensive traditions are essential for a valid marriage.
He just hates the fuss, the publicity.
The impertinent congratulations, being patted on the back, he wants none of it.
Yet he goes through with it.
He does. He admits, I'm not the only party in this affair. And his description of himself at the altar is quite poignant. Preoccupied and a trifle bashful, fumbling the ring, stepping unto the new life. You feel his resignation.
It highlights that clash between how you feel inside and what society expects you to do.
Definitely. Okay, one last encounter with him out and about on a tricycle.
Right. The narrator bumps into him on a bridge wearing a reddish-brown suit on his tricycle.
And he's quite keen to justify the tricycle over a bicycle.
Why? What's wrong with bicycles?
For him, they're too much work. Too strenuous, too flippant. The tricycle is more urbane, more gentlemanly. It lets you loaf, potter about.
And he doesn't like other cyclists much.
Not the ones he sees, no. Hard-breathing, crook-shaped, whirling, bell-banging lunatics, he calls them. Obsessed with speed, mileage. They don't see the scenery, just roads and bicycles.
They're killing cycling, in his view.
The viler type, yeah. Turning it into a race.
And he has some, let's say, of their time, views on women cycling.
Yes, quite controversial now.
Yeah.
He finds women on bicycles a painful sight. Says the effort, the clothes like divided skirts, rob them of beauty and dignity.
Compared to the tricycle.
Which allows for ampler skirts and less effort so they can maintain grace and coolness. He says, a man wants a woman to worship. And the worshiping of these zouaves, comparing them to soldiers in baggy trousers, is incredible.
It definitely reflects the attitudes of the era, but connects to his bigger point about pace.
Exactly. To do things slowly is part of the art of living. He thinks women inherently understand this better.
And the true artist in cycling barely cycles at all.
Spends most of their time sitting by the road, appreciating the view. The ride is just an interlude.
It's all about the style, the approach, even his tricycle's bell.
The gong, yes, described as potent, grave, and reverend, with a note of philosophical melancholy. It didn't demand you get out of the way. It politely asked you to make way when convenient.
The bell of a man at his ease who loved margins.
It's a great image. Resist the frantic pace. Find your own way to move through the world.
Okay, finally, let's touch on how the uncle sees people who are misunderstood or have hidden depths, starting with a misunderstood artist on the train.
Right. This involves the narrator, a poet, a sort of wealthy-looking gentleman, and a cook.
And the poet and the cook find common ground.
Amazingly, yes. They both agree that true art is for itself, not for practical reasons or teaching morals, and that it's always grossly misunderstood by the masses.
They complain about people asking what paintings teach or what poems mean.
Exactly. Utilitarian questions about art.
And the cook sees cookery this way, as a misunderstood art.
He does. Calls it the noblest art, but degraded by being judged only on whether it tastes good or has healthy utilitarian ends.
He describes his own culinary experiments. They sound adventurous.
Bizarre. Pork, strawberries, beer sauce, nocturnes, all black ingredients, served by starlight candles. Definitely experimental.
And he quit jobs because they asked him to make food edible.
Or palatable, or hygienic, or to consider diners' digestions. He saw it as compromising his artistic integrity.
He has quite the manifesto.
You're right. As your art instinct commands, take no heed of the consequences. He even says if he needed an almond flavor and only had prussic acid.
Whoa, prussic acid, that's poison.
He says he'd use it. His job is to make the beautiful gastronomic thing, not worry about health or safety. It's extreme, obviously.
And the punchline is the prosperous man's reaction.
After the cook pours his heart out, the gentleman just whispers to the narrator, just a common cook, out of a situation, total dismissal.
Ouch, that gap between how you see yourself and how others see you.
Painfully clear there.
Then there's the unsuspected masterpiece, which is a bad egg.
A bad egg at breakfast, yes. Initially, the uncle is just disgusted. Feels pity for the egg, this dead end, this failure to become a chicken. Calls it a poor nun, a feudal eremite.
But then he has a change of heart.
It's a complete turnaround.
Yeah.
He starts to see it differently. Pity becomes respect. The egg is potent. It's offensive. It makes you think. He compares it to Jonathan Swift, the satirist.
A gallinaceous Swift.
Exactly. He decides it's a profound parable about life and decay being intertwined. full of irony.
And he keeps it.
Puts it in his library.
Mhm.
On the fourth shelf near the window, with
And,
Swift, Ibsen, and some novels by writers named George.
and when someone complains about the smell,
His response is perfect. That's the merit of it. It's irony. Finding profound meaning in the most unlikely, even unpleasant things.
classic uncle. Okay, last one. The man with a nose, a very sad story.
It really is.
Uh,
Encountered late at night on Primrose Hill in London.
Yeah.
This man just opens up to the uncle about his profound sorrow,
But because of his nose.
which he describes in excruciating detail. Its size, shape, colors. Like a mountain, Snowdon, or a building extension. Red, purple, blue, a mole. Primordial chaos, he calls it.
And the tragedy is it stops him finding love.
Yes. He feels it's like a prison wall, a millbank penitentiary of flesh that chills their dear hearts. It denies him life's best of delights.
And the awful irony is that it's seen as comic.
Exactly. False noses at carnivals. People laugh at the very thing causing him such deep pain.
When duty is suggested as an alternative solace,
He dismisses it, a colorless motive. Especially hard when you feel you have this infinite capacity for love and sympathy, but you're trapped in infinite bitterness and solitude because of how you look.
but he feels understood by the uncle.
He does. He senses the uncle's sympathy, calls him a truly artistic man for understanding. But he's resigned. He's dreading the next day because his cousins are going to show off his nose as a treat for visitors.
Just awful. It really hits home how appearance can cause such hidden suffering.
And that need for genuine understanding.
So wrapping this up, we've covered a lot of ground through this uncle's eyes. Fashion, art, music, photos, marriage, tricycle.
Philosophies of discomfort and ideals, misunderstood artists, even bad eggs and noses.
It's quite a journey. What stands out is how, even though it's all filtered through this one eccentric personality.
It touches on really timeless human stuff, doesn't it?
Mm.
Conformity versus individuality, how we present ourselves, social anxieties, the strangeness of rituals, finding meaning in weird places.
Exactly. These century-old conversations still feel surprisingly relevant. It shows the value of digging into sources like this. You find these unexpected connections.
Definitely. It's not just about Wells, the sci-fi writer. It's about Wells, the observer of human nature in all its absurdity and poignancy.
So a final thought for you, our listener. Considering the uncle's critiques of trends, of being misunderstood, of how we perform for others, his embrace of individuality, even his weird philosophies.
How might you, maybe, borrow his rather unique, sometimes cynical, sometimes surprisingly insightful lens to look at your world and the people in it today? Something to mull over.